The following program is a special presentation of the Big Ten Network, produced in association with the University of Iowa.
Welcome to the Conversations from the Iowa Writers Workshop. I'm Keisha Lynn. Curtis Sittenfeld is our guest today. She is the author of Prep and The Man of My Dreams, which are being translated into 25 languages. Her writing has appeared in the Atlantic Monthly, in Salon, Glamour, and on public radio's This American Life. She is a graduate of Stanford and the Iowa Writers Workshop. Please welcome Curtis Sittenfeld.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here. We're here actually to talk about your third novel, which is called American Wife. And the American wife of which we speak is a woman named Alice Blackwell, who is loosely based on Laura Bush. And for those people who don't know, why don't you tell us why Laura Bush?
Well, I actually am a Democrat, but I have this weird fascination with Laura Bush, and I actually have a lot of affection for her. And so about 4 years ago, I wrote an article for the online magazine Salon where I said, I talked about sort of the love that dare not speak its name, which is my liberals' love for Laura Bush. And at the time I wrote that article, I said her life is like a novel in that all these sort of, she seems like a more or less ordinary person, whatever that means, but all these kind of extreme things have happened to her, and some of which are tragic, some of which are sort of glamorous or privileged. So I actually, at the time I wrote that article, I didn't think her life is like a novel and I should write it. But then a few years later, I thought, I should write it. And then at that time, I wished I hadn't, posted my novel outline online for the world to see. But, luckily, I don't think anyone was paying attention.
Yeah. But then you decided to go ahead and write this novel, which I found just a gutsy thing to do, because of the fact that you're talking about a living person, someone who, after I read the book, I was thinking, you know what, I don't know a whole lot about Laura Bush. But after I read this, and of course, knowing that it's a work of fiction, I found myself really intrigued by her through the character of Alice Blackwell. You said in that Salon article, ambiguities are the foundation of fiction, because I think about when I write, and oftentimes for me it's a what if, and things that seem just completely bizarre to people, especially coming from a Democrat. What is this? You like Laura Bush? Isn't it interesting what kinds of works can spring from that?
Yeah, well, I do think that a lot of fiction comes out of some question that the author just finds fascinating, like, how did that happen, or what would that have been like? And for me, I think, among other things that were interesting to me about Laura Bush is that she was a Democrat until the age of 30, 31 when she married. Well, actually, I don't even know, but I know that's when she married into the Bush family. I'm not sure when her political affiliation switched, but and she also, during the time that she was in her 20s, she sort of purposely sought out low-income, ethnically diverse schools and libraries to work in. And then she had this very quick courtship with George Bush, where they met in the summer of 1977. They met at a backyard barbecue. They got engaged within 6 weeks, and then they got married 6 weeks after that. So I think I thought, that's so interesting. How did that happen? But then I also felt like, in the present day, what does Laura Bush think of George Bush as president? And, does she have a different view of him as a president and as a husband? And I will never know the answer to those questions, and I don't pretend to, but I felt like fiction gave me the opportunity to make these characters who were, somewhat like the Bushes, or use the Bushes as a point of departure, and then just invent and fabricate and all the things you're supposed to do in fiction, and sort of fill in the blanks that are unknowable in real life.
The fun thing about fiction, right, is that you can do this, although it's interesting, again, because this book is being presented as being loosely based and loosely inspired by, it's like inspired, based, inspired on the life of Laura Bush. People are kind of making these leaps to say, is this really who Laura Bush is? And yeah, I was going to mention that, some of the things that you choose to include in your book, that she was an only child, she was a voracious reader, and these are all things we know about Laura Bush, that she has this horrible accident when when she's 17 where she kills this boy who was a classmate of hers, that she meets her husband at a barbecue, and they have this really quick courtship followed by this quick marriage, and a few other things that tie into the actual, her actual life. And I'm curious to know what kinds of things, when you were writing this, what kinds of things did you decide? I'm curious about the leaving in and leaving out. What things did you decide to keep? What things did you decide to leave out, and why?
Well, in general, one thing I should say is that if you read this book and you think, well, I don't know what's true, you should actually assume it's not true. I mean, there are things borrowed from real life, but most of them aren't. And there's a book that I was very sort of influenced by and inspired by, which is a biography of Laura Bush. It's called The Life and Choices of, The Perfect Wife, The Life and Choices of Laura Bush by Anne Gerhardt, who was then, when she wrote it, she was a Washington Post reporter. She's now a Washington Post editor. But anyway, that will tell you, I think, the true Laura Bush. I will tell you the fake Laura. So don't believe a word I say, basically. Yeah. So, but in terms of leaving things out versus keeping them in, what I decided to do was sort of, if I felt like something, kind of had fictional possibilities or, meaning beyond itself, then I thought it was worth including, or, if it was like a little personal detail. There's an example in real life, supposedly, George Bush carried or had someone carry a feather pillow when he was on the campaign trail. And that, I feel like that kind of says something or has meaning beyond itself. Whereas, let's say, I think Laura Bush's birthday in real life is in November. Well, that doesn't mean anything. So it's like I didn't feel like I had to have Alice Blackwell's birthday be in November because Laura Bush's is. So I think it was mostly a matter of, is it interesting to me? And the way I sort of conceived of the novel as a whole is that it has 4 long sections, and each section is built around a major real life event that happened, to Laura Bush, or that she was involved in, such as this kind of compressed courtship with George Bush, et cetera. But then all the sort of minor characters, minor details, subplots, dialogue, scenes, that stuff is all made up. And even the stuff, like you said, the car accident, has this real life parallel. But of course, I wasn't there at the real accident. So even the things that are based on real life are also totally, it's almost like if you told me like the story of how your parents met, and then I wrote a short story about how your parents met, it still would be totally made up because I would have kind of, filtered it all and invented things and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, which is why, again, I find it interesting that there are some people who are thinking, oh, I don't think this is a nice look at Laura Bush at all. Well, it's not really about Laura Bush.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of inspired by Laura Bush. And in this day and age where people often question about memoir and what's real and what's fake, that this says there's a reason why it says a novel on the cover.
Yeah.
This is a novel. It's a creative work.
Well, it's very interesting because I do feel like in our culture there's this sort of wish for everything to be the opposite of what it's presented as. And so if I say I've written a memoir and all of it's true, I think the public would get so excited if it turned out I had told lies. Whereas if I say this is made up, and this happened actually with my first novel, Prep, where I said this is not autobiographical, it's a novel, and everyone said it's a memoir, it's a memoir. We know this happened to you. And so people are saying it's Laura Bush, it's Laura Bush, and it is. I freely admit that it is inspired by Laura Bush, but it's definitely scene by scene, almost everything is made up.
Right. Well, one of the things you mentioned again was the car accident with this classmate. Without giving away too much of the novel, you have this wonderful connection where it describes, her feelings towards this boy. And, I don't know if this is actually documented at all in real life, but I thought it was a really interesting plot point that this relationship that didn't happen is kind of a thread through the novel. The novel opens up with the question, have I made terrible mistakes? And, the way in which that question is answered or not, I mean, it's answered in certain ways and not in others, but when I think about that, which again, some of the most beautiful writing in there was with her, dreaming of this boy and the life that she has. Well, but again, this is the beauty that fiction gives you, right? It gives you that liberty to imagine what might have happened and just made it that much more tragic for, for the reader. I found myself really feeling I felt very empathetic towards Alice Blackwell, Alice Lindgren Blackwell, and by extension towards Laura Bush. I want to read more about Laura Bush because of this. And again, maybe because I read so much fiction. I know what fiction is. So I think that you did a really interesting job. And again, it was one of those things where she does have a life like a novel, right? And so, you know, I mean, it was a really great and ambitious thing that you did to try and put this together. One of the things I want to talk, and I'm glad you mentioned prep, because you did this in prep also. You have this theme about class differences. Another part of the novel I loved was when she goes to meet the Blackwells for the first time, that whole section at Halcyon. People who read the book, there is this compound, okay, it's the Bush compound, the Blackwell compound in Wisconsin, where this woman who comes from a fairly modest background is basically brought here. And remember, she's only been dating Charlie Blackwell for a little while, and then she's brought to meet the parents, okay, and these are imitations of George Herbert Walker Bush and Barbara Bush, and then all the family. And I just thought it was really interesting, her perspectives. And this is, again, you do this with prep in terms of examining, you know, from the outsider's viewpoint, the lives of the rich. This is a recurring theme for you. Why don't you speak on that a little bit?
Well, I do think that stories told from the point of view of an outsider are always more interesting than stories told from the point of view of an insider, because an insider kind of takes things for granted, where as an outsider, I think, thinks, what are all these rituals? And, you know, this way of doing things, this way of life is totally bizarre, you know, and maybe I'm intrigued by it, or maybe I'm repelled by it. But so to me, I almost feel like, I don't know if this is laziness as a writer, but I feel like it would be really difficult to write from the point of view of an insider and have it be at all compelling. So I think that that's part of why I do that, you know, again and again. And then I think I love little weird details about people, and especially I think my favorite thing is a detail that's weird but seems really true or seems really plausible. And I do feel like, I mean, I actually did not do any research on Kennebunkport, the real Bush vacation compound, but I did, I have been in vacation homes, and I do think that a lot of them have this sort of, sometimes the richer the family, the more kind of faux rustic the setting. Like, you know, we're roughing it, but kind of wink, wink.
Yeah, this was a huge compound. They had one bathroom for all that, and this was supposed to mean something. And she's just like, why would you have one bathroom with all this space? You know, I just thought it was really interesting and very, you know, incisive, the way you describe these people. And I was looking while I was doing research for this, I saw some of the books that you like to read. And one of the books you mentioned happens to be one of my favorite books, which is Sarah Phillips by Andrea Lee.
Oh, I love it.
You know, another case of someone who is from the outside kind of looking in, and just a really interesting how, like you said, being an outsider can give viewpoints that, you know, you just can't get. Although I wonder sometimes when I read some fiction, and when they say writers are outsiders in general, in order to have that observational eye, you know, that some people can really give close studies of their own environments, and yet they're doing it in a way that, you know, if you're in it, you really would not be able to see, and that's a writer's skill, I think.
Well, I remember when I was in the workshop, one of my teachers was Chris Offutt, who was, you know, I learned so much from him. He's a great teacher. And one of the things I always think about that he said is, you know, there's a disproportionate number of books written from the perspective of outsiders, because all writers feel like outsiders.
Exactly.
Even though maybe most people don't feel like outsiders. So maybe there is this huge gulf where the normal reader, whatever that is, you know, reads books and thinks, why are these people so weird and neurotic? And, you know, whereas writers think like, more. I identify.
The title of the book being American Wife, we have these 4 sections, like you mentioned, and each one, you know, being about a particular point in her life. The first 3 sections have this wonderful biographical quality where we get to see her mature, and I found myself having to keep in mind the time frame, you know, because again, I'm reading some of the reviews and I'm looking, people are saying, well, you know, she seems kind of passive, and I was thinking, well, you know what? I think that if you look at where she is and who she is at this point, and again, separate this from Laura Bush, just look at the type of woman she is, Alice Blackwell, the character. For me, I totally understood. I understood why she made the decision she made. Even in the 4th part, which honestly, by the time I got to that part, I was thinking, oh man, that's right, she's a first lady. We got to go to Washington now. Man,
Oh, no.
you know, I've thought that in that section, she has become, and it's interesting that she and Laurel Bush don't like to be called first lady. They want to be called by their first name. That she is now a symbol, though, in that section, and she's kind of, there's this reflective text. Again, getting back to choices that the writer makes. Why did you decide to save all this White House information for that last section?
Well, I think that so much of what I wanted to do in writing this book is to take a public figure, you know, again, a fictitious public figure, but a public figure. And when we think of public figures, we think of how they look to us, or like a lot of celebrities, I feel like we act as if they exist only when we see them and when we're observing them. Mm-hmm. And that, I don't know, otherwise they're like in a little box until they kind of come out next time and we can talk about them and critique their clothes. And so it's almost like I wanted to have her be a three-dimensional character before she took on this symbolic role of First Lady. And I felt like the better I could allow readers to get to know her, the more almost meaning it would have when she became First Lady, or the more they would realize, oh, it really is weird to kind of, because I think it must be, I can't imagine, but I think it must be the strangest thing in the world to be president or to be First Lady, where there's so much that you do that's kind of for other people's benefit or for appearance, but then you are a real person, and I think there's also sort of mundane, you know, you have to brush your teeth every morning. Presumably nobody brushes them for you, or, you know, like...
The official brush.
Yeah. You know, you have these sort of, like these kind of ties to being completely normal, but then in other ways, your life is outlandish. And I think that, to me, is a very interesting tension. But I mean, I felt like, okay, this is a book about a first lady. It would be a total cop-out not to have a White House section, but I also didn't want it to be, it's not primarily a political novel. It's not a campaign novel. It's a novel about people and relationships and human behavior and love, betrayal, you know, the big themes. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about your time at Iowa. You were here from 1999 to 2001. I want to know what it was like for you here, being a student.
I loved it. I had very high expectations coming into, you know, the famous Iowa Writers Workshop, and I felt like all of those expectations were met and exceeded. And I loved my teachers. I thought they were so smart. I learned, and I entered the workshop literally on my 24th birthday. Oh, wow. And I think a part of me thought, in my like sort of idiot hubris, I thought like, well, I won't learn that much about writing, but I'll have time to write. Right. And of course, I learned so much about writing. I think I became a much better writer, much more sort of rigorous and more demanding of myself. And I made incredibly close friends very quickly, because it's just such a special thing. It sounds corny, but to be around other people who care about writing as much as you do, and who kind of spend their days and possibly their nights kind of fretting about a paragraph or thinking, you know, like how can the like end of this come together in a perfect way? And so, I mean, I loved Iowa City. I loved everything about that. I mean, I definitely still feel very sentimental. I think in some ways, the way a lot of people feel about college, I feel about graduate school.
That's a good way to put it, because like my undergraduate years were just kind of a blur, but when I came here, I was like, this is really, really nice. And you had mentioned, speaking of what you said about having friends, making friends, so you mentioned in your book about the acknowledgments, your early readers. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about how important it is to have early readers in the novel process?
Oh yeah, it's huge. I mean, I think one, I sent this novel, I think when I finished American Wife, I sent it to about 9 people, several of whom were from Iowa, you know, some of whom weren't. But basically, I think your early readers can save you from yourself. And almost like before you make the book more public, they can say, you don't do this. And especially if I sent it to 9 people and 6 said, oh, like this is awful, or they probably said it more tactfully, I would think, okay, I should probably listen if that many people are saying it. And also, I think when the perfect early reader is someone who helps your writing be the best it can be instead of someone who tries to change your writing so it's more like theirs, which you always meet people like that in writing workshops, but then after the workshop ends, you never speak to them again. And then the people who you find who are on your wavelength, of course, you cling to them for life. And it's just a great thing to have writer friends who, you know, especially after you're not in grad school and you're kind of living your life wherever you are, who understand the sort of balance and who have that sense of like, almost like if they're not writing, they wish they were. If they are writing, they're probably dissatisfied in some way, but you can all commiserate.
Yeah, it's a great thing. It's like having the community of writers.
Yeah.
And again, people who get it, the importance of a word, the importance of a sentence, the importance of the right pen, the right typewriter, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And also people who will devote so much energy into in terms of, and I try to do this for my friends too, that when I'm reading their manuscripts, I'll say, you know, I don't think this is the word you mean. And maybe it's a 400-page manuscript, but you feel like every word that can land as well as it can makes the manuscript stronger, and, you know, vice versa.
Curtis, thanks so much for talking to us today. This is a new book by Writers Workshop alumna Curtis Sittenfeld. It's titled American Wife. I'm Keisha Lynn. Thank you for watching Conversations from the Iowa Writers Workshop.
The preceding program was produced by the University of Iowa in association with the Big Ten Network.